There's a certain, almost hypnotic charm to seaside towns in summer. Something intangible hangs in the air, a blend of casual hedonism, fleeting romances, the promise of adventure, all hazed by a salt-stained neon glow. Isla had lived in Morro Bay her whole life. She'd watched the tourist crowds ebb and flow like the tides, and seen how locals, like barnacles on a pier, adapted their lives around this eternal cycle. She used to love the scene, the beach bars pulsating with music until dawn, the impromptu pool parties, the bonfires crackling by the dunes under the sigh of the ocean. But time, as it always does, moved on. She'd passed 25, then nudged 27, and her circle of friends had noticeably shrunk. The guys she'd once danced with until sunrise now had mortgages, baby strollers, and conversations centered around diapers. She, meanwhile, she was still chasing that elusive buzz of the late night, that spark that made her heart beat faster. Perhaps she was afraid of growing up. Or maybe, something within her was drawn to the encroaching darkness of the night. It was a Friday, a humid July evening. Isla and her friend Sophie were at the wharfside, a dimly lit shack that barely qualified as a bar. He approached their table, introduced himself as Kane. Tallish, early 30s, neatly groomed, with a quiet confidence that set him apart from the usual loud, boisterous beach bros trying to impress any pretty girl in sight. He bought them drinks. Told stories, not particularly riveting, but he had a way of telling them. He smiled just the right amount, enough to be charming, not enough to be pushy. Isla found herself enjoying his company. Sophie, citing an early start, left first, leaving Isla alone with Kane. When he offered to drive her home, Isla hesitated for a moment. Intuition, that quiet inner voice she so often ignored, whispered something indistinct. But he hadn't tried anything weird all evening. Besides, he'd mentioned his brother lived just 2 blocks from her place. Harmless enough, she decided, brushing aside her fleeting doubts. Oh, how wrong she was. He didn't take her home. He turned off the main road, driving further inland, where the streetlights surrendered one by one, giving way to an impenetrable darkness. Her questions, at first timid, then more insistent, were met with a warm, almost reassuring laugh. "It's a shortcut," he said, his eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror. "Quicker this way." Her head swam. She hadn't even finished her last drink. Or had she? Her memory was fuzzy. Her eyelids grew heavy. The last thing she remembered was his calm face, and the dim glow of the dashboard lights. When Isla woke, she was on a cold, hard concrete floor. A single, dim red bulb glowed in the ceiling above, casting long, sinister shadows across what looked like an empty basement. Her head throbbed with a dull ache. Her mouth was cotton dry. Panic, like an icy wave, began to rise from the pit of her stomach. In the corner, near the ceiling, she spotted a camera, a small, black eye, silently watching her, and on the far wall, beneath a series of jagged scratch marks, as if made by fingernails, were rows of tally marks, line after line, many rows, dozens, over the next few hours, or was it days? She saw no one. Time flowed differently here, distorted by fear and uncertainty. Only the soft click of the red light as it switched on, then off again, plunging the basement into near total darkness. Sometimes, she thought she heard breathing from beyond the wall. When he finally came down, she screamed. A raw, desperate, primal scream. He merely smiled, that same calm, confident smile, and whispered, "I knew you'd stay." Those words, spoken so casually, pierced her with a terror far greater than any shout could have. she never saw daylight again. When the authorities, acting on an anonymous tip 6 long months later, raided the house, they found the red room. The walls were stained with blood. The room was empty. The tally marks on the wall numbered 32.
Isla had been the 32nd.
Isla's body was never found. But every July, when Morro Bay once again fills with tourists and the carefree spirit of summer, someone goes missing. And the locals whisper that sometimes, at night, in an abandoned house just beyond the dunes, a single red light flickers on. Like a beacon for a new victim. Or a warning for those who might still heed it. And now, a story for those who enjoy a walk on the wild side. But remember, not all paths lead to safety. The woods behind Garrett's summer home in Pennsylvania were thick and ancient, steeped in local lore and chilling tales. Old-timers spoke of spirits, lost travelers, and strange creatures inhabiting its deepest shadows. Garrett didn't believe the stories. Still, he loved those woods and the winding trails, perfect for his mountain bike. That day, he went out just before a summer thunderstorm. He liked the way the clouds grew heavy and the wind began to howl through the trunks, as if warning something ancient. The air grew thick, charged with anticipation. About 2 miles in, he reached his usual resting spot, a small clearing surrounded by gnarled, old pine trees. Their branches intertwined overhead, forming a sort of dark canopy. But the moment he stopped pedaling and hopped off his bike, the wind vanished. Not just died down, it vanished instantly. A dead, absolute silence descended, as if all the air, all sound, had been sucked out of the world. Even the birds fell silent, and Garrett felt a chill run down his spine. And then, from the trees, from the deepest part of the woods, it came, Garrett. A whisper, high, drawn out, soul-chilling. He froze, his heart missing a beat, peering into the gloomy undergrowth. Nothing. No one. Just still tree trunks and shadows. Had he imagined it? Then again, louder, more insistent, closer. Garrett. That voice wasn't human, it was ancient, unearthly.
Primal terror gripped him.
He leaped back on his bike and tore down the trail, back towards the house. Branches whipped at his arms and face, but he paid no mind. He could clearly hear the rustling of leaves behind him, quick and rhythmic, as if someone was running after him, keeping pace. He didn't dare look back. By the time he burst out of the woods and reached the house, the rain had started to pour. He was soaked to the bone, his face pale and eyes wide. He couldn't explain the horror he'd felt. He never went back into those woods again. Not even close. But that whisper, it followed him. It haunted his nightmares, echoing behind him on that forest trail. Sometimes, on quiet, windless nights, when he was alone, he thought he heard it again, very close, just outside his window. Then one morning, a few weeks after the incident, he woke up with a strange feeling. The house was quiet, too quiet. He went to the kitchen for water and froze. On the hallway floor, leading from the front door to his bedroom, were muddy footprints, caked with forest dirt and pine needles. He lived alone. The door had been locked all night. The windows were closed. And for our final story tonight, a reminder that even in the quietest, most seemingly safe places, something terrible can lurk, especially when you think you're completely alone. Evan's house sat at the edge of a canal in a sleepy southern town. The kind of place usually described as idyllic. Thick reeds grew on the opposite bank, and long stretches of nighttime silence were broken only by the chirp of crickets or the occasional splash of a fish. The kind of place where the stars in the black sky seem particularly bright, and boats left moored at docks are easy targets for petty thieves, but surely not for anything more sinister. Evan's parents were away for the entire summer, leaving him alone in the large house. That kind of freedom makes a teenager feel like the king of the world, master of his own small universe. That evening, he'd invited his new girlfriend, Mira, over for dinner, which smoothly transitioned into a session in the hot tub on the back deck, overlooking the dark water of the canal. It was around 11 p.m. They were laughing, talking, enjoying the warmth of the water and the cool night air. And then they noticed someone slowly paddling a kayak down the canal. Strange, Evan thought, who kayaks in the pitch dark at this hour? There wasn't another soul around. He instinctively waved. The figure in the kayak didn't wave back. Didn't even turn their head. Just continued to glide silently over the black water until it disappeared around a bend. A little creepy, but they soon forgot about it. Later, upstairs in Evan's bedroom, they were watching a movie. Relaxed, a little drowsy. Suddenly, a light flickered outside the bedroom window, which faced the backyard. Evan muted the TV. Listened. Another short flash. He cautiously approached the window and peeked through the blinds. The man in the kayak was back. Only now, he wasn't in the kayak. He was standing right there in their yard, not far from the hot tub. In one hand, he held a flashlight, its beam sweeping across the walls of the house. His other hand was hidden behind his back. His silhouette was dark and motionless. "Hey! What the hell?" Evan shouted, throwing open the window. His heart hammered against his ribs with a mixture of anger and dawning fear. The man slowly turned his head and whispered something. Too quiet to make out the words. But the very tone of that whisper sent a shiver down Evan's spine. Mira screamed and recoiled from the window. Evan grabbed a baseball bat he always kept in his closet and stormed down the stairs, ignoring Myra's pleading cries not to go outside. Rage was now mixed with a potent anxiety. When he flung open the back door, ready for a confrontation, the yard was empty. The canal was still and silent as a mirror. No kayak. No man. Silence. Only the chirping of crickets, which now seemed deafening. But on the grass, near the hot tub, were wet footprints. Barefoot. Leading from the water, and stopping abruptly in the middle of the lawn. They locked all the doors and windows, checking the latches several times. They tried to reassure each other, but the tension hung heavy in the air. About 2 hours passed. They were lying in bed, listening to every creak and rustle, when a knock came from the closet inside the bedroom. A slow, deliberate knock. 1, 2, 3. Not from the hallway. Not from outside the bedroom door. But from the closet, just a few feet from the bed. Evan, bat raised high above his head, his heart pounding, yanked open the closet door. Nothing. Emptiness. Clothes hung undisturbed, but a thick, nauseating smell of wet reeds and silt filled the room. The same smell as by the canal. Mira screamed. In the morning, after a sleepless night filled with terror, they made a horrifying discovery. Wet, bare footprints led out of the closet, across the bedroom, down the stairs, through the living room, and out the back door, straight to the canal. And there, they ended at the water's edge. They never found that kayak. And Mira was never found either. The police only discovered her damp flashlight lying on the lawn, and long, deep drag marks in the grass, as if something heavy had been dragged from the house to the water. or from the water into the house, and then back again.